to these kind of meetings before. So we have two about give or take 15-minute presentations. One, Lynette Flood from the state, who really on behalf works for the town. And then AES will have a presentation. So after Claude, Lynette's presentation, there'll be time for questions. And we're asking people to write their question. And that's just to sort of keep us moving. And then at the end, after we've had the two presentations and taking the sort of technical questions, then we will open the floor for comments. And those would be sort of the typical 2 minutes, and if you get through everyone and people want one. So it could be around an hour, hour and a half, I think, total time, just so people have some sense of that. This is a warned public meeting. We follow Robert's rules of procedure. So for this meeting, what that means is wait to be recognized by the moderator before speaking, state your name. If you're not a Westfield resident, tell us where you live, and if you're attending in a professional capacity, like from the Regional Planning Commission or newspaper, that you just state who you are. Please, no side conversations. The acoustics in here are not the best, and that noise really muddies up people's ability to be able to hear. If you need any of the speakers to increase the volume, just like town meeting, I ask people, just do this, and we'll know, because the ventilation system is really noisy, and I can tell you're gonna have to speak a lot louder. This is a technical topic. I don't know if we have many engineers in water engineers in particular. So we wanted it to make it easy to talk to the presenters, you know, to be careful with engineering jargon. If somebody uses a word or a phrase and you don't know what it means, just raise your hand and say define, and then whatever the word or the phrase is, and we'll take care of it right then, because it's just distracting to wonder what somebody needs from somebody's explaining something. So that's all, just like point of order at town meeting. If you don't follow what's going on, just the same thing. Is there anyone that needs an accommodation that they haven't already figured out? The bathrooms are out there. If you need help writing something to write questions, you can ask any of the town staff, so Madonna, Lisa, Nikki. So anybody have any suggestions, something in the field that would make this process go easier? And then after the presentations, then like I said before, we can take comments. The meeting is being recorded, and you can give your questions to Donna or Nikki at any point. And people should have copies of the agenda. Does anyone have any questions looking at the agenda? There, okay. All right, so are we're just moving forward now with Lynette's. Oh, you have to be great. Go ahead. Little back.
So
Okay.
I'll take it out, Dennis, please try and in that as well, like maybe. So the background, why are we even doing this? Where did the idea come from and what have you? And I guess I would start by saying that at some point, I don't remember just when, legislature passed a law that allowed people to build an accessory dwelling on their lots. And that might be able to explain better, because only you can't prevent that anymore from happening.
Right, and it's not necessarily even another building, it could be just dividing up a large a larger bill into. Employed in one housing.
What was the law that was passed?
Can't cite the law, but it was to allow people to add an accessory dwelling if they want.
They can't or can't?
They can.
They can't.
Oh, they could.
So,
Yeah.
so that being said, in many cases, there'd be some limitations to the, capacity for septic, for instance, and that kind of thing. So just hold that thought for a moment. The other thing that came along with that, and Lynette's gonna do a lot better job explaining it than I could, is that the state had some funds available to help towns do a study. No cost to the town, really, at the end of the day, a study to see what the needs, what the possibilities might exist to increase capacity for wastewater and in the area that would be, that potentially will be served. So this is all the background. When we found out that we had the ability to get some funds to do it, we thought, why not do this? What it could do if at the end of all this, the town decided that we wanted to do a wastewater treatment, something or other. Which we'll have a whole bunch of, our engineering folks are gonna, during this process, are going to, hopefully come up with some potential possibilities. At the end of that, we could decide to do nothing, and walk away from it, they won't cost us anything, we won't have to fund any money. But if, once we know what the possibilities could be, then it kind of opens up another potential. For, for instance, if I owned a house that doesn't have the capacity to take care of wastewater from my house and I come to sell it, somebody wants to borrow money to buy that house, it probably wouldn't work very well. And so the potential would be that if the town had some kind of a wastewater treatment, I'm not saying facility because it might not, some way of treating wastewater, the home values could increase just because of that possibility. So those are the kind of things that made us decide, yeah, I think we owe it to the town to do a study. At the end of the day, it won't cost the town anything. If we move forward, it'll be the voters that will approve it. Or not. So that's kind of where we are at the moment with that, and I think from here, I don't know if Dennis will want to add any more, we'll take your question there, but yeah. So I think I'm just kind of setting up a, sort of a backdrop for the conversations that are gonna follow. Okay,
You said voters, that you mean the town voters, or do you mean selected, or do you mean?
the town.
All town voters?
Whole town vote.
So
Well-
even if you're not on the system, you still.
So that's a question that I don't know that we can answer just yet.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's beyond even the study,
yeah.
because we're not there, we don't know what it is.
So,
If a town bonds for something, everyone gets to vote, but we are just like,
we're not even there.
we are so
We're-
far away from that, this is just. To give people information to think about their options with their property. That a fair,
I think
short,
that,
okay, great. All right, so,
I guess, it would be Lynette's.
Lynette?
opportunity to- if that's-
and Lynette sent me just a little bio, I just talked with her, I talked with her just the other day. But Lynette is the Senior Water Infrastructure Program Engineer at the Department of Environmental Conservation. And her job is to provide technical assistance to Vermont communities that are using public funds for engineering consultants to look at water and wastewater issues. So she is our expert. By far and away, most Vermont towns do not have a water quality engineer on staff. And so this is how towns get that expertise. And it is provided we do not pay anything to her. It's the state representatives, we have 200 towns that are under 2,000 people, that they don't have any on staff. So that's her role, and She's gonna give a brief presentation tonight, so you get a sense of the scope of what she does for the towns. And her slides, you should have a copy of this, these are the slides she'll use tonight. And sometime in the next couple weeks, she's going to be here in person and give like a 40-minute presentation. And you can ask you'll be able to ask questions tonight. If you have questions, again, submit them and, but she will be here for a much more in-depth. So we understand how this expert is available to us for this process. Okay? That's it.
Thanks. I'm Lynette Cladone. I work for Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation in the Water Investment Division. The towns asked me to present a couple of slides today to sort of help frame the conversation. So the first slide is on the terms that we'll be using as part of this discussion. So you'll hear the words preliminary engineering report and the letters PER. What that means is it's a study with several decision points, and we have another slide that talks about those decision points. You'll hear septic system and wastewater disposal system. Those terms are interchangeable in our rule and in our language as we talk in the wastewater community. The types of wastewater systems that we will be talking about primarily are community scale wastewater disposal systems. This is shared infrastructure and it is a soil-based system or sometimes called an on-site system. You'll also hear the term suitable soils. Suitable soils involve a number of different characteristics that include depth of groundwater, the permeability of the soil, how easily that soil flows water through. And then the suitable soils have to be located in an area with that it's big enough and setbacks that are appropriate for the rules that allow for permits for wastewater systems. Then we'll also talk about wastewater treatment, and it's important to distinguish that wastewater treatment happens in septic systems as well as at wastewater treatment plants. So wastewater treatment is fundamentally a series of processes. Those processes are physical, chemical, and sometimes physical, biological, and sometimes chemical. So wastewater treatment includes septic systems or those more complex industrial processes at a wastewater treatment plant. We'll also talk about wastewater collection systems. And there are several different types that might be talked about as we get into alternatives. We'll talk about wastewater treatment plants. Those are larger industrial size processes. We'll also probably talk about a sewer extension as a possible outcome of the study. And sewer extension is also a term that's defined in our rule, which is a new wastewater collection system to a wastewater treatment plant or a new wastewater collection system to a community wastewater disposal system. We may or may not talk about today affordability, but I do want to introduce that as a concept. EPA has defined affordability, which is a metric, and it is a metric that is defined as a percentage of the user rate for a typical household divided by the community's median household income. And based on a study from the mid-90s, EPA determined that an affordable rate for wastewater is between 1% to 2% of median household income. Lastly, there is a term called selected project that comes out of the recommendation from the study. And there's a number of different types of actions that can be recommended as a project. Some involve construction and some do not involve construction. So this is a graphic that we use a lot to sort of explain the concept for the shared community systems. In this graphic, there's a number of different houses shown with like little beige blocks are the houses, and each house has its own potential septic field or septic system. So then the ones that are shown just in the green are solo on their own. The ones that are in the pink circles have small cluster systems with 2 or 3 homes or buildings on one shared system. The brown colored area is a shared system with multiple systems on it. And then lastly, the pea green shaded area is a much larger size system. So in our wastewater rules, there's 2 different rules. One is the WW permit program, which permits on-site wells and septics for systems 6,500 gallons per day and less. And so that sort of break point is around 24 homes for a typical system. And then above that, you'd be looking at a different set of rules called the indirect discharge rules, which requires fundamentally much larger areas because the septic fields have to have a redundant septic field or a second septic field, and they switch every other year between those 2 septic fields. This is sort of the process that one would go through for this type of project. Right now, we're just in the study phase, which is shown with the blue circle behind it. Overall, we have a 3-step process with any of the capital projects that we do. Step 1 is planning, step 2 is final design, step 3 is construction. At the end of step 1, there's just a report. At the end of step 2, there are plans and specifications that would allow the project to go out to bid. And at the end of the construction phase, you would end with a system. So we are currently just at the end of the 30% step in the preliminary engineering report. And that is a step where you identify why you're doing the study and what the needs of the community are, and sort of the restrictions that might be available to help you plan around the project or action. And then at the 60% level, sort of the next check-in. At that level, several alternatives have been analyzed. And between the 60% and the 90%, there's a selected project that is developed. But again, the selected project is chosen at a public meeting. So there is a formal decision point between the 60% and the 90%. And then lastly, there's a finalized document that can incorporate small changes after the 90% to reflect usually minor adjustments relative to state concerns and minor edits. So those are the slides I plan to give today. And I will pass it along to the next person.
So we had a little hard time hearing on this end. Just so that you know, Lynette, I'm not were people able to hear that we did shut off the ventilation, which helped a little bit. Do we have any questions for Lynette? All right. You have it written down?
Oh. Let me write it down.
Well, we were asking people to do it just to try to, is it short?
Yeah, it's
Very short.
just that's, is there a meeting after every step? You know, like
Um,
your
Yeah,
16
these
items,
guys, right.
so there is a meeting every step. Oh, yeah, the other one.
Again, another question.
Okay.
Yeah, so I spoke to Lynette on the phone when I picked up the survey because I wasn't aware of this. So, and just to kind of, what were the preliminary issues that caused this? Are there actually households? Are there 2 households, 3 households? What prompted this? Was it getting the money for the wastewater system? Or was this, were there actual problems that caused this to happen?
We did hear Jake, Jake did explain this at the beginning.
So there were no problems that came up that made us do this.
Cause I read the meeting minutes, there was discussions of hypothetical problems.
Hypothetical, but not,
Right, problems with some sump pumps and smell of sewer.
Right, and that is not a question for Lynette, so we can, if we can
Well,
park
we had
that.
that discussion.
She was not part of any of that, she doesn't know our personal history, so it would just be questions specific to her presentation right now are the only questions we're doing.
Okay,
Then, but I'm happy to come back to that. After,
well, yeah, that was a question for her, cause that was.
she wasn't here, she wasn't part of it.
We had that discussion. I talked to her, and asked her that question, so that's why I'm bringing it up.
And this is
So,
I'm trying to keep this organized enough and.
right, well, things are gonna happen, so. So my question is, were there issues, because they were in the meeting minutes, and I had that discussion with her.
Well, she wasn't at those meetings, so I want you to just hold this and. There
Okay.
seems to be a very simple answer to your comment. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Well, then you're gonna stay on and listen? Okay,
Yeah. If you
great.
don't mind, I'll go off camera so I can focus.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll see you in a few weeks.
I'm just gonna step.
Okay, good evening, everybody. As Pat had said, my name is Kevin Farrington. Thank you all for being here on a beautiful summer evening. Your time is valuable. I'll try to be as straight to the point and brief as I can, and hopefully make your time here this evening worthwhile. Thank you to the select board members as well. Help with Kellyani, we'll jump right in. We will, can you write that? Yeah, okay, so, this is what we're calling the wastewater study. So it is a preliminary evaluation of, the situation with regard to individual septic systems and whether or not there might be opportunities to explore some type of a collection system and combined treatment. And we're gonna explore opportunities and constraints and try to evaluate the pros and cons associated with that. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Okay, so my plan right now is to talk to you about these short list of things. First of all, why the study is important, and Jake did a pretty good job of touching on that to begin with. The planning phase that we are in right now, which is what we're calling the 30%. There will be a 60 and 90% in the final report. The study area, which will bring up some maps and show you exactly what we're referring to as the designated village area. I think we're probably mostly all somewhat familiar with that. Assessment of existing facilities. This initial phase is really an assessment. It's understanding all the site conditions, environmental constraints such as, wetlands, prime agricultural lands and conservation lands, those types of things, as well as soil type depth of groundwater. So it's really a data gathering step initially. Public involvement, which is why we're here tonight. Hearing from you is a really important part of the process. And we want to hear stakeholder involvement, and as Pat and Jake alluded to prior, or stated prior. Ultimately, there will be a vote. So it will be up to you to evaluate and make your own opinions and decisions, and your own vote that will come down the road. The environmental considerations, some of which I just mentioned, and then lastly, I will review schedule. And also let me say too, how grateful we are to have Lynette. She's got a lot of expertise, a lot of know-how, and having her expertise and guidance is great to have, and so we're really happy to have Lynette as well. So let's move forward. It works, okay. Okay, so this is a little bit redundant with what Lynette reviewed, but we will have we're assessing the existing conditions, and this is our 30%. Now, as an engineer, we tend to like to jump to solutions, but we have tap the brakes a little, pull the reins, and we want to make sure we're really understanding the problem. You can't work on a solution until you make sure you have a good understanding of the problem, right? And so that's what we're doing here today. Down the road, part of our job is to assess alternatives, evaluate pros and cons, cost implications, bring that to you. That's my comfort zone. That's what I like to do, but we can't do that now. We'll do that down the road. Okay, I did this a little bit out of order, but that's okay. So why is this study important? And, I think Jake said it as well as I can, but obviously Westfield is using individual on-site septic systems, usually basically consisting of a septic tank and a leach field of some type. Systems are aging and prone to flooding. So, and to your point, is there known problems of I don't know that there's specific failures per se that have triggered, but fair to say that a couple of things. Systems are aging, and I have a septic system at old. It's getting kind of old, seems to be fine. But as we think about, eventually, we know as homeowners, there comes a point, right? And with the new regulations and some of the constraints we have, we know, for example, we have shallow groundwater. Farmers know best, right? When we have shallow groundwater, the regulations are a bit more rigorous. Now we're getting into a raised bed or a mound system as opposed to a buried system. The new regulations are a bit more rigorous. You have setbacks from wells. Some of these septic systems predate the current regulation, and going and trying to replace that in kind can sometimes be challenging, if not problematic. Especially too when it comes time to sell our house, because we all know if somebody's coming to buy a house, first thing you want to know is how's the septic system. And that could be costly, and if there's regulatory constraints, it can even be problematic. So this is a forward-thinking planning type exercise that hopefully puts people in a position to make sure that they are not going to encounter these potential problems with the the systems themselves, the property value, and that's before we even talk about environmental considerations, which of course is a big driver, and of course Lynette can speak to that as well.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
I'm sorry, please ask up here for questions that the conversations in this way. It's the only way for me to keep control of this meeting. So if we will have, we are asking people for questions in writing to avoid this.
Right, I
If
guess
you're
you're writing
writing
questions. So I'd like to ask him a question.
No, you may not ask these questions. You may ask the select board a question, you can write a question. And after he's finished his presentation,
Well, I
And
wanted
you
for
will-
clarification, that's in Robert's rules of
Claire-
order.
a clarification.
I'd like to know what the
is done.
current regulations are, please. What the current regulations are, I can ask those questions.
Clarification of the.
Regulations,
Which
what
one?
are the current regulations?
I can answer it if you like, or defer to Lee.
I just don't know
Okay.
regulations.
You mentioned
what?
To
regulations,
list the body of regulations would be a little bit lengthy, but. The regulations generally involve separation from groundwater. So you have to do so.
no, are they state regulations?
Vermont state regulations.
Okay, and is that like an ordinance that people have to follow?
That
we
is
have to
correct,
meet?
yeah.
Okay,
And, later too, if you'd like, I could send you a link and you could read them through.
yeah, just what, if those are things that we're supposed to comply with,
Yeah.
is that only when you sell your property?
It's one, yeah, well, it's one of those things where, sort of, and again, as a homeowner. Sort of out of sight, out of mind, until it's like you have a problem, and then all of a sudden, okay, what do I gotta do here? And then you go and you find out, okay, I gotta get a permit. How do I design it? I gotta hire an engineer, I gotta do soil testing, and that's when you dive in and you start to go,
So that's compulsory of every person that lives in Vermont,
That's correct.
okay. Is that why we're doing this right now?
Well, again, not per se, and we're not saying that. Your system failed or yours failed, what we're saying is this is a proactive planning measure. That's worth considering to see if there is a better long-term solution. For individuals and the property owners and the community as a whole.
Okay, thanks. Just
Is
wanted
that
to.
fair?
understand that.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, very good. Also to protect public health and the environment, we are in the Lake Champlain Basin Program. I was telling Pat yesterday, I happen to have been a member of the Technical Advisory Committee for about 12 years on the Lake Champlain. Basin Program. Put a little plug for them, they're doing good things. We're, in the Missisquoi River Basin as well. And so, protection of surface waters and the environment is certainly a component of, anytime you're talking about wastewater disposal or sewage disposal. And then again, Jake mentioned the, Act 181. Which, and going back to the Act 250, which does now allow, increased density and development and does allow. The, second principal structure or a second dwelling unit on a single lot. And so that's an opportunity that is not allowed that some people may want to consider. If so, this type of study might have some benefits to those individuals, not to mention the community as a whole. If the select board, wants to do other measures within the zoning, to allow those types of development. So that's a factor as well. And then, yeah, sure, to address system failures, not that there's any happening today, but these things all have a certain life span and at some point they need replacement. Okay, try to move this along here. Okay, so this is our designated village center. You guys, I think are all familiar with this map. That's a 1/4 mile radius around that village center. And I am going to let Kalyani speak a little bit about the public, the surveys themselves. I will say this. We did send out surveys to individuals, probably a lot of you saw them. If you've already received it and filled it out, thank you. We got pretty good response. I was pleasantly surprised. If you haven't, we have more right here. And I would encourage you to take one, fill it out now and leave it, take it home and send it in. And we will appreciate that. Nobody knows your property better than you do. And whatever information you can share with us, is helpful. We want to know, we want you to share that information. We want to be as well informed about your neighborhood and your property as we possibly can be. And Kelly, I'll let you speak a little bit to the
Survey.
the surveys themselves.
So, thank you, Kevin. This is our first public meeting and, sort of talking about the whole community engagement, public involvement process. But I have to say that public input has played a vital role in this process in the study so far. And the town mailed surveys. I know you've got the hard copies, but must look familiar. I would say about 43% of the property owners responded to the survey, which is a pretty solid return for a volunteer survey. So thank you for doing that. Any bit of information that we get on your existing septic system or the wastewater system is helpful for us to, guide and make informed decisions as we look at the different alternatives. So, and going into the survey responses, well, 62% of those respondents reported no major issues. About 15% noted backups, surface discharge, or odor concerns. And many systems are known to predate the modern state permitting process, which means that those were installed prior to 1970. Which means that documentation is limited on or it is non-existent. So what does this tell us? This tells us that although some systems may appear to function okay, there's an underlying risk, particularly as systems age, properties change hands, or weather impacts increase as we've seen intense rains, especially in the Vermont area. Going forward. So, as we all know, there is no centralized wastewater system for the town of Westfield. So there is no mapping of the existing septic system location that currently exists. And as part of our effort that we're making towards the study is that the town and AES or NOTFES, we're preparing to conduct site visits in partnership with the landowners. So earlier when the survey letters were mailed out, the town also provided flags for the residents to pick up, which I was told that some of the residents picked up those flags and where their septic system or where they knew the septic system, septic tanks are located on their properties. So they were asked to mark the location of the septic tanks and where the wastewater pipes exit their existing buildings. So all this information that would be collected and gathered during the data collection process, it will be integrated into a GIS mapping to help evaluate connection points as we look into different options for the wastewater system. Just a slide here. Now, to plan any future system, we need to know the expected wastewater volume. Based on the property use in Vermont DEC state design standards, we estimated the current average flow to be around 33,000 gallons per day. And this includes flow from approximately 59 residential properties, majority of which are 3-bedroom single-family residences. And the remaining are commercial or mixed-use properties. Looking ahead 20 years, we're projecting a modest 6% population increase. And in addition to the natural population growth, there's 5% from infill development that is included in the combined 37,000 gallons per day projected wastewater volume. Now, as having talked about the environmental resources and considerations earlier, environmental considerations are a major factor in system design, and those are critical to system siting. And Westfield has we just look at the wetlands, for example, There are about 444 acres of wetlands townwide. And within the study area, these wetlands, as you can see on the map here, they're concentrated near the Missisquoi River and low-lying fields, and these areas are not suitable for wastewater discharge, and they must be avoided when evaluating disposal of leach field locations, as we look into different options for leach fields. So, in addition to wetlands, there are prime agricultural lands or prime agricultural soils, which is another constraint in the village of Westfield. There's a high concentration of prime agricultural soils, and these soils are valuable for food production and are protected under state and federal policy. So any infrastructure that is proposed in or near these areas may trigger mitigation requirements. So that would include limiting disturbance, soil replacement, or offsets. So all these careful site selection considerations are going to be vital as we look into different alternatives. Again, Westfield has several conserved lands, many of which, if you might notice, they coincide with or overlap with the prime agricultural lands that I just told in the slide before this. Especially if we look at south of Route 100 and toward the town of Troy, towards the east. So these lands are permanently protected and not eligible for infrastructure development, and it adds a layer of complexity where we have to work with Vermont Land Trust as if we're looking for potential parcel for the soil disposal system in those parcels. So that limits our siting options further, and it reinforces the need for careful planning, which is the goal of this study. Especially when we are combining wetlands, floodplain boundaries, and conserved parcels into our evaluation. Now I will pass it over to Kevin to go over the schedule.
Thank you very much. Now, and so just to be clear, some of those aren't necessarily prohibited, like wetland is generally prohibited, whereas the prime ag lands or conservation lands, they are discouraged or may require special permit. But those are the some of the constraints that will have to be evaluated in contemplating, as Kellyanne said, of possible disposal locations, if that alternative is pursued. Okay, so lastly, schedule and key milestones. So what we are here right now, we are at the 30%. We are July 2025. We are having our public meeting. The 30% report has been submitted to Lynette. It's under her review. Once she completes her review, that will be shared and made public. You'd be welcome to see that. There is an online posting which Pat can share with you if for people who want to just find that online. The next step will be the 60% report and another public meeting that will be in December of this year. I have a feeling the weather's gonna be a little bit different when we gather for a similar type of meeting on that day. That one, when we start to get into identifying and evaluating alternatives, I expect there to be a fairly limited number of alternatives, 2 or 3. And then a selection of alternatives at the public meeting that will lead to a 90% report where there's actually a recommendation for a preferred alternative. And that would take place in April of next year. And then finally, there would be those would include cost estimates, of course, that's a huge factor, right? And you can't really judge an alternative until you know how the costs compare and what does this mean to me, right? In terms of, how we're gonna pay for this and, how is that cost shared? We understand that those are critically important questions. that you're gonna want answers to, and our alternatives analysis will include cost estimates that will provide information to you and to the select board members to inform the discussion and the evaluation and decision-making process. And then ultimately a final report in August, so just about a year from now. And at that point, you will have a final report with a preferred alternative selected. And then the next step will be a public vote. And that's, as Pat indicated, that's a little bit of a difficult question, because if it's a bond act, then yes, everybody votes. If it's more of like a district creation, as potentially it could be within the affected district. That's down the road. We don't know the answer to how that'll play out, but generally. You will vote, or you will, I should say, you will have an opportunity to vote. That is, yeah, so that's pretty much our presentation. So what I tried to cover tonight was the nature of the project, some of the, of course, public input in the survey that is half completed, a work in progress. We invite, encourage you, if you haven't already. Our schedule for moving forward, some of the environmental constraints as we move forward, and then our schedule for doing so. Again, take the, if you haven't, if, you know, take the survey with you, please. Get it into us, we appreciate that. And we'll be moving along, and I will be, after the meeting is formally closed, I will be happy to hang around, and if anybody has any questions and wants to chat one-on-one, I'll stay here later, or until Pat Jake throws us out.
So I've just been handed, more questions than I think can be answered. Tonight, unless people have got,
Well, can I look at them and go through them, and why not to do that, and then pick,
what I need you to do. Is what everyone does at a town meeting is you raise your hand and you wait to be recognized. Which I think I went through that at the beginning, and it's disruptive. Anything else is.
I'm sorry to feel that.
Okay, so.
Please don't speak to me in the meeting.
I'm just wondering if you can do that. Because we gave the instructions, I want to be responsive. But this is what we have all agreed to.
I've already submitted all my questions beforehand, and this is a copy of them.
Okay,
So if it makes it easier, I can go through the questions and do through a process of elimination. And it's okay for me to ask him questions.
no,
To clarify.
who can raise your hand and ask to,
I did, Pat, but
I did not see it.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can.
You can ask him a question. What you can't do is dominate this meeting for an extended.
Oh, I'm not trying to do that. I'm sorry
People are
for that.
allowed 2 minutes to make a statement, and this was why we asked for the questions in writing. Because
You have a
a
question.
lot of them would be
If
answered.
you like, I can go through them to eliminate it, so it doesn't take long. But yes, I do have questions, and that's why I'm here. And I have raised my hand, and I've done everything that you asked me to do, so I'm sorry you feel different. So how would you like to handle this?
What I would like you to do is if there are questions to be answered tonight. To
I have questions to ask.
questions. Okay, you have questions to ask,
Right,
but do you want answers tonight, or you just wanna ask?
whatever's acceptable.
Well, the idea was to hopefully answer people's questions, but I don't think. I think the questions that most are involved with the work that these folks are doing.
Well, I feel it's relevant.
Would be the most.
Can I look through that and you let me know when I can ask those questions? And I'll do that? How would you like to do this?
You may ask one question, I don't know how many people have questions. But just. why don't you pick out a couple of questions and then. If there are more and people want.
I didn't know there was a limit.
Yeah, I mean, meetings can only go on.
Well, I don't wanna take up people's time, so again, my question before was what prompted this whole initiative? Do we actually have problems?
Okay, that is not their question. That is not a question for them.
Well, that's what I'm
That is a
trying to find
question
out.
for the select board, okay? And that is why you ask your question and then you direct it to who it goes to. And these folks, we are looking for questions about the work.
Well,
that
my
they are
question
doing.
is, why did we start this?
Okay, that is not a question for these people,
I can
but,
answer that.
and Jake already answered it once, but he can answer it.
But I
again.
need clarification, because in the meeting minutes, it says there were problems.
What meeting?
So where's the meeting minutes for the planning commission, when you've done planning commission for over a year now. Over a year ago, planning commission was started on this
Okay.
wastewater system.
Okay, so that's a question for me as the chair of the planning commission. So. But it's, I am trying to be respectful of these people's time, so I'm happy to answer that question, but not right
Do
now.
we have problems with our wastewater system? Do we actually have problems?
I
our
think you
system
saw the
failed.
data that was.
No, that
shown
didn't
there.
answer my question.
Well, I don't know what your question is. You know,
Okay, so I'm gonna ask the selectmen, do we have wastewater problems?
Not that we know.
So why are we
So-
doing this?
Okay.
I went through that in the beginning and I'll do it again. So. This whole thing, I mean, it's. Were you here when we started? Okay, well, I said the background and I can briefly say it again. So when the state of the legislature passed a law that would allow. Accessory dwellings to be built. Within, on lots within the town. One of the issues that would come up or would prevent somebody from doing that is limited. Potentially limited access to wastewater. Septic, systems. When we. Became aware that there was money available that the town could access to do a study. We decided to take that. Because it won't cost the town any money to do everything, I mean, we're getting a loan, but it's a forgivable loan, it's basically, I don't know why I just call it a grant, but. To assess what we've got here, so that the impetus to do this had nothing to do with any failed systems whatsoever. Okay, so that's the answer to that.
I just need a clarification because I read the minutes and
That's
when
as clear as it can be.
it just was vague and I need a clarification, which I have every right to ask that
Okay,
question.
so that's the answer. There was no known issues, okay,
Okay, no, because I read the planning meetings and thought that there was subsistent problems,
okay.
so.
Are there some other questions, written questions that somebody else, I mean, we're gonna give everybody a chance.
you have. Who is doing the study on? Who's doing the study? Are any homeowners involved?
Yeah, if any homeowner was part of the study, whether they actually might have the knowledge. For example, like I oversee the water system. So I know the water system, so I know the reasons, know the things, just hypothetically, are you involved in any?
Well, the
Or
survey,
is it just a survey that you're doing and you go everything at us and we just deal with them?
the survey was a way for homeowners to give information, is that correct?
Of individual residents. Individual residents,
Right.
not the overall, the map is the overall map of the water system as well. So I mean.
So what do you, people can
So
contribute by coming to this meeting, by answering the survey?
you're obviously.
Yeah, I got involved, but I guess Rick's question, or that.
So is there involvement that's with the selectmen or the selectmen gonna open this up?
So the ideal here would be to form a committee,
Okay.
be on the select board, along with the select board. To, like what you just said, the water system, the use, how many gallons a day, pretty much.
Right,
So
right.
that would be really good information for
Right,
you guys to use when you're making, estimates of how many gallons a day might. Not everybody's on the water system though.
but the TO that would be involved in this waste system would. With the same structure.
probably, kind of.
Yeah,
It might be.
90%, say 95%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting back to Rick's, what I said about Rick's question, one of the things we're supposed to do is form a committee for that.
Okay.
So I think that it would be great if somebody else wants to be, we don't want 50 people on that committee, but I think if we had another. There's the select board, there's the town officers, if we had another 2, 3, 4 people that had some interest in doing that, I think that would be great.
Rick, are you trying to say that you know actually well water pipes and water lines,
Oh, I'm-
exist in the streets and all that?
I
And
know,
I'm sure when they engineer any system, that would have to come up beforehand anyway.
because of any,
But especially dig.
if it's, for example,
Right.
elbowing the water system,
Right,
example.
right, right.
You know, I know
Right.
I have all the maps.
Well, I'm sure that they'll have to
all this.
research and have that map in order to
But-
engineer.
But the
But
knowledge,
I did wonder,
the knowledge
not
you
about
bring
my
to the table.
family,
you
is there anybody get more involved into it than just a study and you guys putting it through the vote without input?
Well, I'm sure we're not gonna do any engineering, but we can give all. the
No, but you're putting it through the
knowledge.
vote, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so this is our first crack at this ever, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
we
not
might-
sure that we're getting it all right, but I think. To get some public involvement is important, I think it would be very
Exactly.
valuable for you guys.
absolutely, yeah, so if you wanna, if you're gonna have a committee and you wanna join, then I think that would be a great avenue. Also, you know, I would appreciate if you have mapping of infrastructure easements, plus whatever institutional knowledge you might have about that. Then that would be very valuable information and we would really welcome and appreciate that. Yeah, so, yeah, I would definitely appreciate that. But we want to collect that data, that's a big part, that's our initiative right now is gathering data. If you have that data to share, then by all means, please share.
I'm not sure if it's characteristic of the fact, but I think probably is because those that are here are interested. Rick expressed some interest on being on that committee, would be kind of unique with a couple other people.
I didn't say I mean.
I think we volunteered, I don't know.
That's carrying some of your
I'll
knowledge.
let you know if there was
Sure.
people involved.
Right, yeah, that's, yes, the answer is yes, very good.
And could I add one other thing too, very quickly, you know, with respect to the surveys. I just want to make it clear that this is in no way a regulatory assessment or enforcement of anything. This is purely a data gathering, so I don't want anyone to think like, oh, they're gonna, you know, come and red flag on your, failing system. This is not enforcement action, we just want to know where is it, how old is it, you know, if you have a design detail, like great, that. Just to clear that up, so you don't think somebody's not functioning. Issuing a citation, or we're not doing any of that stuff.
Okay, other questions?
Not a question, so much as just a statement, you do have flags on the table over there. For anybody who didn't get a flag, I think that. Bonnie said that you're gonna be doing it in the next few weeks. Yes, obviously.
Is there?
What's
State
the,
your name, this is the book where.
I'm sorry, John Hamlin,
John Hamlin.
I'm just wondering, what's the distinguishing differences between the mile circle and the internal? I mean, are you looking at two different ways of doing just the inside and possibly doing the outside, or why was there a distinguishing made rather than just one big circle and it would be, how much is the system gonna cover, or why is there the just a central valley circle and then the other circle?
Yeah, that's a good question. The project work area is targeting. Whoops, I did something. Okay, yeah, so. This is not the best map, but I'll use it. Yeah, is targeting the properties within the primary designated village center. This is just sort of the larger area, which does a couple of things, including potential locations if there were gonna be consolidated on-site treatment works of some type, that it could potentially fall within that larger area.
Okay, that's someone lives within the big bubble, but not within the
Within
small
the
bubble,
bubble,
trying to
yeah.
figure out how much affect this.
Yeah.
Westfield has with the state, a formalized designated village center.
Mhm.
Which is
And that is
internal.
the area that is,
That's,
I believe, and that's how that line
okay,
Yeah.
came to be, it was. It's a step that we took, took a while.
In my understanding would be a quarter mile outside of that would be the actual area that might put the potential to be using a wastewater system.
Correct.
So that's a quarter mile line around the designated village area.
right, okay, so your system that you're planning on designing might encompass the whole area, not just the village area.
Potentially, yeah.
Yes.
So I'm, what's
Oh, just gonna add, do you have a question?
well, a short one, it was just, I'm assuming you're gonna use topographical information as well as, I mean. You know, if somebody's down in hole and
Yeah.
needs to come up here, for instance, or if somebody's on the hill and it flows down, I mean, there's a lot of things to consider, right?
Absolutely, yeah, we're already looking at that. I'm trying to keep brakes on my alternatives, but certainly gravity flow versus pumping is obviously an important consideration, so. Topographic information, which we already have through LiDAR available online, is a key component of understanding, you know, where we can easily extend gravity lines and where pumping might be required, and those types of things, so.
That's all if we get to that.
Yeah, yeah.
There must be some other.
Other questions, yes. There's anyone else have a question?
Please take donuts and beautiful blueberries here. Okay, so that you know.
But right. Did you have any more questions, Jennifer? Have you gone out everyone's room?
I just feel that this is very vague, very, very vague. I feel this is very vague.
You're making a comment.
I'm making a comment.
Okay, so we're at the comments now, okay, well.
It's really not necessary to speak to me like that.
No, I meant, we had a section of the meeting that was for questions, and then we had a section for comments, and that. Is a way of
It's really
organizing a
important to be
public
respectful.
meeting.
I'm asking
Sorry,
questions.
if you heard it that way.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
It's just, I find this all very vague. I mean, we've had huge tax increases. And, you know, it's like if people's systems are not working, they're not failing, yes, I'm making a comment. I've submitted my questions, I've been very vocal about it. This is where I live. And I just feel like it just seems very, very vague to me. And I'm not learning anything new here today. And I'm not even quite sure. I understand why we have to do it. But I mean, as you know, in Montgomery, it's you know, $1 million for a small amount of households. And we don't want to go down that road. And it's just, I'm thinking about myself and thinking about other people. And I'm not afraid to speak up. Because I can't afford to stay here much longer if we bear the cost. And right now they are bearing the cost. And I have every right to ask questions. I've done nothing inappropriately whatsoever. And this planning commission has been going for over a year. Why was this not mentioned at the last March town meeting? Why something this important was not mentioned at the town meeting?
I would be happy to, is anyone else confused, but otherwise I will sit down and explain, I feel like I'm not communicating with you and I feel really bad about that and.
No, you've been jumping all over me, which I don't deserve.
Well. Sometimes that's my job.
Well, it's my job to speak up to that.
And that is quite fine, but, you know, when the rules are set and then someone does not raise their hand, wait to be recognized by the chair, but just jumps right in, then it's not the same, I can't treat everyone the same. So, and if you don't like that. I like to, about that, but this thing that you're hanging on to, I'd be happy to sit down, because Jake has explained it. I don't know what's missing, but I'm happy to try to help connect whatever those dots are that aren't being connected for you around.
Well, jumping all over me is not gonna connect the dots,
Okay.
but that's all I'm gonna say. So I'm just, it's very big. And it's very unclear, and I thought there were issues, and there don't appear to be any issues, because I read the meetings, I discussed it with Lynette, and I'm not even sure why we're doing this. Unless we opt in for those people that do need to be opted in, and we opt in for those people that don't need to be opted in.
Well, we're a long way from that.
I understand.
All right. All right, this is very slow process for probably many good things.
The other, you have your hand up. Okay, Rick, did you?
But Rick has.
I just, it's confusing me a little bit, Pat. The one, I know you're on the planning committee, correct?
I am on the planning commission, which existed 30-40
Yeah, I
years
know.
ago. Okay.
And so have your planning committee done a study on this?
Oh, of course not.
So you had nothing to do with this, this is new to you as it is to us, in a sense. Yeah.
When you are aware that does anyone mind a little digression here? Of the history, that's not directly related to what these folks thought. Is everybody good with that? I'm just, because it won't take long. Okay, so, when we were doing the bylaw revisions. And we were talking about, because we were required to put in this Asian stuff and setbacks and out of those conversations, not just about that, but. We knew the water table was high in the village. And what we did, the planning commission, I volunteered as a person, because the planning commission has no jurisdiction on wastewater. But as an individual, I said, I would go to the select board and raise this issue and ask if there is any. You want me to call a state, see if there's some money around to try to get a read on this. And I would report back to the planning commission what I found out. So
Makes sense.
that's the planning commission's, they had zero jurisdiction on this, so. Anybody else? Anything? And as I think you mentioned that. You can stay around for a little bit if people just wanted to talk one-on-one. Yeah, okay. All right, do you go decision meeting?
So I guess, yeah, thank you everyone for coming and, there's more to come. Like I had said at the beginning, there's some questions that some people might have that are not yet able to be answered. And just reiterate again, we are not pushing, the select board is not pushing for a wastewater system. This is a study. That's it. And as this goes along, things will become more clear to us. What some of our options might be. If we decide we don't want to do any of them, that would be the end of it. But we thank you guys for agreeing to do this for us. Any more questions from anybody?
So if I'm saying here, this is all forward looking to see if it's available. It's more forward looking and see what we have instead of having all the septic systems fail and then being forced to do something. We're trying to be proactive, or the select board is trying to be proactive in kind of seeing what's available instead of reactive.
So the old
Am I kind
saying,
of generally?
yes, you are, the old saying that knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, we're trying to gain some knowledge of what options potentially could be out there. Yeah, that doesn't mean that exercise that power, so to speak.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, so if there are any more questions, I guess you would just play this meeting adjourned. And I just like say, hang around if you want.
We need a motion to adjourn.
Sorry,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
okay, I'll second it then. All in favor, say aye. I think it's unanimous, both of us voted.
Thanks very much, everyone.
For a second, I was gonna look off with the laptop. Okay, to pull this up.